And I'd like to welcome our guest, David Clarke. How you doing?
Yes, welcome. Yes, I'm here.
It's lovely to see you.
Now, David, I hear you've had some very interesting developments with your project since we last met.
Yes, Rebecca and I have seen Caroline Dinenage, the MP from Gosport, who is supporting our project. And I've also written to the Governor of Winchester Prison, David Rogers. Also, I've spoken to our MP for Fareham, Mark Hoban, who informed me that David Rogers, the Governor of Winchester Prison, has asked me to contact the head of reducing offending, Gary Wright, who says he's sure he will be pleased to look at ways in which Winchester may be able to host this event. Not only that, Steve Bryan, the MP for Winchester, had contacted me, offering me any support that I need.
Well, that sounds very encouraging. Could you remind us of what you're seeking to do? And I'm sure this will interest our listeners and people.
Yes, I can. I'm seeking to perform our punk rock opera called Borstal Boy in Winchester Prison. The Asylum Seekers are a punk rock cover band from Gosport, and I've put together a set of punk rock tracks that tell my story as written in my book, Converted on LSD.
I see. So this book of yours tells your story and how you turned your life around after a life of crime.
Yes, and over 30 prison chaplains have received copies of my book. It tells my story, how I turned my life around from a criminal past to a positive good on the 16th of January 1970. My brother Michael and I were both criminals in the 60s and were sent to prison for malicious wounding and carrying a firearm without a licence. Michael was 2.5 years older than me and had already served 2 spells in Oxford Detention Centre and then Rochester Borstal. I had already served a probation order for garage breaking, and so I was sent straight to Dover Borstal in 1967.
Yes, I remember, and you told me about your difficulty in reading.
I was virtually illiterate, could hardly read, let alone spell, so my education was got from what I picked up from listening to others. I could read comics, but only the Dandy the Beano. On leaving Dover Borstal in 1968, I had a 3-year career of successful, undetected crime until the 6th of January 1970, when I had a bad experience on LSD, experiencing the horrors. This I write about in my book, Converted on LSD Trip. As a result, I realised I wanted to change for the better. First thing I did was to learn to read, in order to educate myself through reading those things I needed to learn.
You also mentioned you had lots of stolen gear. What happened to it?
I had in my possession loads of stolen gear, including cars, speedboat engines, garage and electrical equipment, including a 48-foot by 24-foot builder's shed that I used as a workshop to ring cars. After a year, in January 1971, I was questioned by the police about a certain crime. I knew what I had to do. I told them about my criminal past and confessed to 24 crimes that I committed since leaving Dover Borstal in 1968.
So what happened? Did you go to court?
I appeared in court on the 9th of February 1971. I was expected to go to prison for at least 3 years due to my criminal past and the fact that it was noted by the chairman of the magistrates that my crimes over such a short period of time was quite the worst they'd ever seen. I was conditionally discharged for a period of 3 years to the amazement of us all.
That really is an interesting story. Can you tell me more?
Well, the whole story is being told in our punk rock opera called Borstal Boy, and is performed by the Asylum Seekers. It's my intention and desire for the Asylum Seekers to perform this opera in Winchester Prison, if not Aylesbury YP. The reason being that I want to encourage anyone who wants to turn their life around to tell them how I did it. In my case, it began with realising the need to educate myself, which of course meant learning to read through reading the right books and seeking the right help.
Please tell me more about your life since then.
I turned my back on crime on the 16th of January 1970. I learned to read, educate myself and got a technical qualification. I became a service manager of Granada TV Rentals. I joined a strict Baptist church, went on to higher education and qualified with a Cert Ed, a teaching qualification awarded by Birmingham University. I became a Baptist minister and taught electronics for over 20 years at Luton College of Higher Education and Fareham Colleges.
Now, what about your brother Michael?
My brother Michael, on the other hand, ended up in trouble in Thailand. and had to flee the country, and he ended up in the Philippines and got a 16-year prison sentence to be served in New Bilbao Prison, the largest penitentiary in Asia's Far East, where he died of tuberculosis in that prison in May 2005.
Oh, I'm sorry, what an awful end.
There is a good end to be told about Michael. Even though he died in prison, we had good success in our work in the prisons of the Philippines. But that's the ongoing story as told in our book, Trojan Warriors. It is my belief that if you wish to help those who want to turn their lives round, you should give them the tools to help them with their need. I tell what happened to me, and I believe my story can help many.
So, the punk rock opera, tell me more, and how will this help others?
The reason for the punk rock opera is to encourage and provoke people in need to read my story. I tell how I turned my life round, to encourage those who are in need to learn to read in order to educate themselves, to stir up in them an interest and encourage them to read what happened to me. Music is a great medium in education. After all, a book needs to be read if it's to be of any use.
You mentioned prison chaplains and their response to your book. Can you tell me more about that?
Over 400 copies of my book have been requested by prison chaplains from HMP Manchester, HMP Belmarsh, HMP Parkhurst and HMP Risley, and as a result I've rewritten the book in a special edition called Borstal Boys for prison inmates. I intend to make these copies available free of charge on request from prison inmates.